Good morning, everyone. Let's stand for a moment's silence and a pledge of allegiance. And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. I'll call today's meeting to order. We'll begin with the approval of minutes for November 1st, 2022. Krista, was everybody here for that meeting?
Yes, sir.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Next on the agenda, Commissioner reports and comments. Vice President Baker, first, congratulations on your victory.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another County Commissioner meeting. I'd just like to thank our election board staff for just, in my opinion, a phenomenal job that they had done last week, and actually the last couple of weeks, taking care of everything out there at the election, getting results back to us in I think a very timely manner. Just a monumental task that's put on our staff out there, and I just want to thank them for a job well done, and also want to make sure I thank all of the poll workers and everybody involved to make our election very successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kiefer?
Yeah, many of the same sentiments for me as Commissioner Baker. As we end up election week and next week being Thanksgiving, I'm thankful to our poll workers, Board of Election workers who worked the elections and are still counting ballots, I believe. Up until Friday of this week, ballots will be counted. So thank you for your hard work and dedication. I'd like to thank my family, my wife in particular, for their patience during the campaign. It's tough, as it should be. And I'd just like to thank my family for their patience and supporting me along the way. And I'd like to thank our county employees, our staff. I know many will be out next week enjoying the holidays, as I'm glad they are. We have some staff that will be working during Thanksgiving. Emergency services has to continue on, so I thank the staff who are working for that. I believe there may be some staff working in water and sewer as well, maybe some other departments, but throughout the year, just a big thanks to our staff for making our jobs as commissioners easier. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burkett?
Welcome, everybody. I would just wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. That's all for me.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Wagner?
Hey, good morning. I was privileged to be able to attend 3 veteran ceremonies. Being a veteran, I try to get to as many as I can. Marty Snook always is a real nice event, and the Morris Frock, and then the Vietnam Monument. So it was rainy there a little bit off and on, but turnout was a little lower than usual, except for Morris Frock because that was inside. But, I wanted to thank all the veterans and everybody participated to make that happen. And some of our staff at Marty Snook, helps to get that prepared. So I do appreciate that. Also, echoing the statements of Commissioner Kiefer and Baker, it was a long road, long haul, and an election. I want to thank anybody supporting me, including my family, as Commissioner Baker said. They take the brunt of that sometimes when you're never home. I want to thank the staff, on early voting out the election board and election. I see them showing up there all the time, just making sure things are going smooth. Does anybody need anything, making quick repairs to whatever might break? So I want to thank the staff for doing that too. I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Wagner. I also would like to thank the election board, their volunteers and their workers, unsung heroes, making sure the most important thing we do as citizens goes through smoothly, and that is the vote. I want to congratulate all the candidates who won and those who put their name in the ring to put out there to represent our county, and especially thanking all the voters who showed up to participate in our democracy. I did attend several of the veteran ceremonies that was mentioned, but one I do want to share with the commissioners was a Clear Spring event at the American Legion. They were very thankful for all the commissioners, mentioned us by name, for participating and help supporting the banners and the flagpoles that they have up there at their monument at their park. I'd urge everyone to go up there and take a look at the Clear Spring Veterans Memorial Monument up there. It's awesome. It's very touching to see that respect that we're paying to our veterans. And they also did express their thanks for Danny Hickson, Doug Levine, and the park employees for the help for that. And they also mentioned Susan Buchanan by name and her staff for helping with the grant process on that. So it's often the commissioners lead the way, and we get the thanks a lot, but our employees behind the scenes get accolades that are not publicly acknowledged. So I want to make sure those employees were mentioned at Clear Spring, and the mayor and Legion were very thankful for that. And in closing, I do want to wish everyone, their citizens and our employees, a safe, happy holiday season coming up. With that being said, we'll begin with staff comments, and I believe I have Mr. Brown. Tom, would you introduce yourself in the matter?
Good morning, Commissioners. Tom Brown, Office of Emergency Management. I'm before you today to report that on November 23rd, John Reginaldi is going to be retiring from state employment. John's been our Western Maryland Regional Liaison Officer for the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. In that position, he was responsible for assisting Allegheny, Garrett, and Washington counties emergency management offices, and specifically for Washington County, he has assisted us in our Emergency Operations Center on multiple events, too numerous to mention. He has also coordinated quarterly meetings between the emergency management offices for Garrett and Allegheny, Washington counties. He's assisted with writing emergency plans, assisted with the coordination and planning of training exercises, and participated in grant management activities. He's worked nights, weekends, holidays, even during vacations, so that Washington County had the connection it needed with the state of Maryland to respond to and recover from disastrous events. Although John does not live in Washington County, and he's not a county employee, he has assisted the county government and the emergency management office and the citizens of the county, not because it was required of him, but because he truly believes in the fundamentals of emergency management by ensuring the communities are better prepared for disasters. He has been a great asset to this county, and his efforts, knowledge, and experience are going to be greatly missed. John, would you please come up with me? And with that, I believe you have a presentation.
Yeah, we'll let John have a few words to say first before we do that.
Not to put you on the spot, but
Here, have a seat, and then we'll do a presentation.
not to put you on the spot.
Well, I can't thank you well enough. This is a complete surprise. I guess over 40 years in public safety, working with Tom and the folks out here has probably been the highlight of my career. I've been working since the 1970s, and I'm really going to miss working with you folks. It's been a labor of love, and as Tom said, it's 24/7 with me. So my wife and I have had many a conversation on what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I've just been glued to the hip with Tom.
You have time to change your mind.
I know I do.
Oh, so-
But if I do, that might make me a candidate for psychological services. So, but it's been really fantastic working with you all.
Tom and John, would you join me here?
Reginaldi. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Board of County Commissioners, we'd like to present you the certificate of appreciation to John Reginaldi. As you plan for retirement at the Western Maryland as the Western Maryland Regional Liaison Officer from Maryland Department of Emergency Management, the Board of County Commissioners wish to recognize you for making Washington County government and the citizens of Washington County a priority during response, recovery, mitigation, and planning. Since 2013, you have assisted the citizens throughout disasters, such as the South County flood, numerous snow and windstorms. a train derailment in South County, a potential dam breach, and most recently, the COVID-19 pandemic. Your dedication and hard work will be missed. Congratulations, a heartfelt thank you from all. Thank you. Commissioners, would John, will you join us up front for a picture? Tom, you too. We'll get you to the center. We'll get you right there.
I feel like we're in here.
Terry, you want to balance that? Yeah.
Oh, the sun's shining.
Again, congratulations.
Exactly.
Now you can start worrying about that.
I was worried about you gonna wear it today.
I get all kinds of comments on that, though.
Continuing with staff comments, I believe, Krista, I have you next.
I have a request from the Washington County Historical Advisory Committee that you accept and approve the bylaws as written. I have a copy if anybody would like to see them, but they are requesting that you adopt these bylaws effective today, November 15,
Okay.
2022.
Have there been any concurrence from legal? I mean,
There has been concurrence from the county attorney's office. There have been concurrence from the president and vice president of the Historical Advisory Committee, as well as the clerk offers concurrence.
so everybody's on board. So you're requesting us for a vote to approve those today?
Yes.
Commissioners,
Motion to approve.
Second.
have first and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much.
Yep.
Is there any other staff in the audience that I missed? Okay, Mr. Downey, we'll start with you.
Nothing this one. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. County Administrator?
Thank
I
you, President
forgot
Klein.
your- I forgot your name.
Good morning. That's okay. Good morning, Commissioners.
No.
I have a few items for your consideration this morning. The first item for consideration is the recommendation to hire Katrina Wyant Urish as the county's new HR Director at grade 19, step 15. So I'd ask the board's approval of that recommendation.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 5-0, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
See you in the
That
audience
has been
anywhere?
approved. She's not here, but she will be starting tomorrow morning.
She's, tomorrow morning, there you
Pending the
go.
approval of this board today, she's going to start tomorrow morning, so
That's awesome.
here tomorrow.
If you're listening, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Second item I have is for consideration and recommendation for the upgrade of the position of emergency manager from a grade 15 to a grade 17, with the change in job title from emergency manager to the director of emergency management, and to approve the revised job description, all retroactive to October 1st of 2022. Pursuant to county policy, the individual that currently holds that position would be a grade 17, step 16, up 2 grades and back 2 steps, and I would ask for the board's approval of this recommendation.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
First and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 5-0, thank you very much.
And the last thing, it's already been mentioned, but obviously next week is Thanksgiving, so there'll be no Board of County Commissioner meeting next week. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, November 29th. And I would like to personally wish everyone, especially our county employees, a happy, safe, and blessed Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much. All right, next on the agenda is citizens' participation. This is an opportunity for citizens to comment about an issue or issues of county practices and interests. This is not an interactive dialogue or a question and answer session. It is solely time to hear citizen comment. Please limit your remarks to as close as 3 minutes or under.
Wait a minute.
Hey, where'd that
3
come
months.
from? I'm trying to make the.
He'll be the only one
roll.
here. If it's 3 months, he'll be the only one here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any citizens in the first row, second row, third row? Any citizens at all would like to come forward? Seeing none, I think we're going to go to Mr. Buck Browning. Please come forward, introduce yourself and the matter. Where did I get 3 months? I don't know, close to saying it.
You want to stay here for a long time?
Really like it here. Good morning, Buck.
Good morning. I have one of our board members also.
Oh, please come forward too. Yeah, oh.
She wouldn't come up when I asked her.
I was gonna,
You asked her to.
I was gonna say,
Former County Commissioner Dory Nips.
Dory Nips, that's right.
Welcome back.
good morning.
Well, good morning, and thanks for letting us come in. Echoing what you said about Thanksgiving coming up, we're basically here to say thank you. Just wanted to give you an update on our partnership. I think it's working. It's not perfect, but it's working. Specifically, we have received a $40,000 grant from the Rural Maryland Council for Rural Health Initiative, number 2. We started this program last year, and it's kind of like the iceberg, you know, so much of it's under the water, you only see a little bit. And the further we dug into rural health last year, the more we realized we had more to do. So this grant that we have is fantastic. It did require a match, and thanks to our partnership, we had it. We could go forward and apply for it. We're going to focus on 4 areas: nutrition and fitness. That's one, actually. We're going to be expanding our exercise options for people. The statistics prove that it's tough to live in rural America and rural Maryland. The obesity rates, the rates of cancer, diabetes, and just flat out loneliness for some people coming out of the pandemic. So those are things we're going to be addressing. We're also having an aggressive volunteer program. So I'm sorry to see John already left, because now that he has all this free time, we should be getting him involved with us. Back to the exercise piece, we have some exercise bikes that have a bar. Like when you have to step over the bar in order to ride the bike. It's no big deal if you haven't had a knee replacement or a hip replacement. But if you had those surgeries, you need the type of bike where you can step through. These are things we learned. So through this grant, we are actually buying better equipment that will address a wider range of people or make it more user-friendly. I'm excited about the youth initiative. There is a programming gap for children between the ages of 12 and 15. They're aging out of the programs like summer camps and things like that, but they're not yet old enough to drive or get around, especially if you're in rural Maryland. So we are coming up with a program. We're going to call it the Junior Staff, creating a teen center within the community center. Now, our building is kind of small, so we kind of have a NASCAR feeling. We put everything on wheels so we can move it around. So the teen center right now is going to be in the loft in the gym, but we can also move it to a meeting room or even outside. So without you guys, none of this happens. And I say you guys, but I mean everyone. Andrew Eshelman has been, you know, I'm sure he doesn't always like when he sees me show up on his caller ID with my questions, but he's been great. Office of Grant Management, Susan, somebody already mentioned Susan. You know, we started a pilot program during COVID for basketball because we had parents who said, kids got nothing to do, they're not going to school, do something. So we did it, had to wear masks. It worked so well, we then applied for a Gaming Commission grant, and it was funded. In year 2, it was great. So now, starting in January, we're going to have what we call Sports Saturday, because not all kids like basketball. So we're going to move it around each Saturday. We'll maybe do basketball on the first Saturday, and then indoor soccer. And I mean, it's just going to, it opens up so much because we have the facility. So December 11th, we have something that's new. We're going to have Memories of Fort Ritchie. It's going to be a day of fellowship. Every time we go, like Smithsburg, Steam and Craft Show, anywhere we go, people come up and say, my dad served there, or my mom, or my grandmother. I remember going up and, you know, General Eisenhower used to shop there. President Eisenhower. There's stories. So we're going to do that on December 11th. Everyone's invited. It's free. And we're just going to kind of pass around a microphone and let people tell stories about Fort Ritchie and just listen. Friday night, we have a speaker series this week. We have a lady who has researched the Spanish flu epidemic from 1918. It's kind of fitting, 100 years later, what we've been living through. Volleyball clinic on Sunday. I mean, the list of activities that our staff and our volunteers have put together is just amazing. So really, I just wanted to come and say thank you and make you aware of this grant. The partnership we have with Meritus because of this grant and the health department has been fantastic, to the point where on January 1st, we are going to have the first Go for Bold plunge and pledge. This dates back to the old polar plunge we used to have. You're familiar with it. You've been there.
Yeah, I went ankle deep though,
Yes.
Yeah, that water's cold.
but sunk to my knee.
Well, the Healthy Washington County Go for Bold program, we want to be more involved. So actually, Dr. Douglas Spots is going to be taking the plunge, along with Danielle Stahl, who's in the leadership team for that program. So you're invited to that too. So.
Buck, a couple of years ago, I was getting my hair cut in Franklin, West Virginia. That's about 2.5, 3 hours from here. And the lady that was cutting my hair, all she wanted to talk about was Fort Ritchie. She made it sound like they were the best years of her life when she was stationed up there, lived up there and so forth. But lady in Franklin, West Virginia, I was talking to her about Fort Ritchie.
There's something special there. And
Yeah.
I think I've told some of you before, the only thing better than the view from the community center is the people. And we do a lot of things. We have a scholarship program for summer camp and our kids club, if someone can't afford. But man, it's hard to use it sometimes because people are proud. A couple years ago, we had a scholarship for a family into summer camp. And the next year, they applied again for summer camp. And I said, how we doing? You want to apply for the scholarship again? And it was a grandmother. She said, no, actually, we're going to make a donation. We're in a better place this year. That there's no sense of entitlement there. It's real and there's good people, and I think that just speaks to it.
Yep.
We had a board member who was in Italy, and he met someone who had a connection to Fort Ritchie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a special place. So, you have questions or anything that?
The board would really, as a representative of the board, I've been there since 2009, since I worked at Fort Ritchie, and we would like to thank you for your continued support, because we believe that we are filling a void in Fort Ritchie and the Cascade area. We don't have a town council. We're not incorporated in Cascade, so you are the government entity we look to for support. And I think we've used that money wisely and continue to turn it into some more money, just like the rural grant that we've gotten. So thank you very much, and we hope you continue to support us. And Terry, when you're down in Annapolis, please keep us in mind
I'll
in the
never
back
forget
of
you.
your head if anything that you can do for us at the community center, we would certainly
understand.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Thank you, Buck.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you very much.
And I do know, I know you mentioned Andrew and Susan. I know that they work very closely with you, and Andrew keeps me up to date on all that. So, obviously, whatever we can do to continue to help you, we'll do that. And we'll continue to try to make it successful. So that's what we'll do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on with our agenda, next item will be the real estate taxes on property to be purchased by the Boys and Girls Club. I believe they're here.
Yeah, I mean, Addie's here, and, obviously, I'll go ahead and start. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but you can come up if you want. This is a follow-up to the discussion we had a few weeks ago, and I think the board wanted us to come back with some additional information, which I think we have for you. And I'll just start out, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong about this. I think we determined that the total amount due was $54,645.42. That included interest. So Todd is here just to make sure that I don't say anything I'm not supposed to say. But it's my understanding that the treasurer has the authority to waive the tax, waive the interest on the taxes, not the taxes, but waive the interest. And so I think Todd has agreed to do that. So the total amount of county and state taxes due would be $31,132. So that's the amount that we're talking about now, if that's correct. There, he shook his head, so that's all I needed to know. I appreciate him coming and you coming today too, just to make sure. But I think that's the information that you were looking for. So the amount of taxes owed is $31,132.01.
And we determined that we'd just pay those taxes, and then treasurer's going to waive the interest.
Right, he has the authority to waive the interest, and that's on the state and county portion. And so, so that's the amount. So I think it would come from, I think either CIP or just the general fund, right? I'm looking back. The general fund balance. So the commissioners are interested in doing that. And I guess we can work out the logistics about whether they would give it to you and you pay them, or we pay it directly. I don't know how that'll work, but.
So you're looking for a motion?
Looking for a motion today, and that amount to go ahead and provide that money to the Boys and Girls Club to pay those taxes on those parcels of property.
Just a question, the treasurer has the authority to waive any interest due on state taxes? Is that?
I think that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd motion to approve the tax of $31,132.01.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have first and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys very
And
much.
While we have, thank you. While we have Mr. Hershey here, we want to thank him for his many years of service. I believe you're retiring now. Is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner.
How many years?
That'll be 36.
36 years.
Wonderful years, thank you.
Well, on behalf of all of us, thank you. Congratulations. Best of luck on your retirement. And you just heard they need some help up there at Fort Ritchie volunteering, so. if you're busy.
There you go.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Todd.
Okay, next up, presentation of the June 30th, 2022 audit financial statements. Please come forward, introduce yourselves and the matter.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Chris Lehman with SB & Company. I was the engagement partner again for this year's financial statement audit and related services. And the brief presentation I have here is our results of the audit, as well as our firm and industry required communications to governance. If you have any questions as I go through this, just please feel free to stop me or hold those to the end. Let's see if I think I'm controlling it. This is just a summary of the services that we were engaged to perform. Similar to deliverables we've issued in the past, we've issued a clean or unmodified opinion on the June 30, 2022 financial statements for the county, as well as we've reviewed the uniform financial report, which is required to go to the state of Maryland and be submitted by October 31st of each year. So that deadline has been met. We're also going through the uniform guidance, or what's termed single audit. A single audit's required for an entity that expends more than $750,000 of federal funds per year, and that's basically a federal compliance audit that we're working through. And then upon completion of that, we'll file the data collection form, which is required by the federal government to demonstrate compliance with the requirements for the single audit. We also complete the federal Form 990s, which is a tax-exempt tax return for the golf course and the agricultural center. There's also a number of state-required filings. I'll call them smaller reports, but they relate to any agricultural land transfer tax. There's some agreed-upon procedures that we do that require landfill calculations and a landfill report, a 911 audit, as well as a fire and rescue schedule. And then lastly, I know it's a long list, but lastly, the last deliverables, certain agreed upon procedures we do at the detention center as well. This slide here is just a high-level summary of the results of the audit. Like I said, on the financial statements, we've issued a clean or unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That would be the best opinion we could give under professional standards. We did not discover any instances of fraud. A financial statement audit is not a fraud audit, or it's not a forensic audit, but we are required to have a skepticism that fraud could be perpetrated by anyone at any time. We did not record any or propose any audit journal entries to management through the audit, so that just speaks to the quality of the books and the ledger that we were given to audit through. We did not discover any material weaknesses in any of the internal controls, that being a deficiency or an amount that management is not able to recognize on a timely basis. So we didn't have anything that rose to a material weakness. We're also still working through the single audit and wrapping up our testing for that, but to date we have no findings to report that would need to be included in the single audit report. And lastly, we received the full cooperation of management. Any records that we requested, questions we had, we obtained timely answers to those questions, and any records that we needed. In today's environment, with grants are getting more complex, there's new grant programs, there's new accounting standards. It's not easy being a finance person these days, and I've had a number of municipalities, struggling to meet the state deadline. So I think that just shows you that, the county can meet their deadline. I think is a very positive sign. Questions so far?
Just want to thank Kelsey and her staff for doing an awesome job.
Okay. Well, I'm just setting the stage for good results, so it'll be all all good from here. So, this slide here just shows a picture of our risk-based audit approach and the different phases of the audit. And what the next couple 2 or 3 slides go through our results of our assessment of the environment. And typically, if we walk into a client with a poor environment, we typically are going to have lots of journal entries, material weaknesses, single audit findings, and things of that nature. But when we walk into an environment that, takes the new accounting standards seriously, takes risk assessment seriously, their internal control structure, and proper approval of transactions and monitoring of controls, that speaks to a well-controlled environment. When you have a well-controlled environment, you have positive results like we have here for this audit. And one item we kind of start with, and it really goes throughout the whole organization and the whole audit process, but considering the control environment, and there's 5 interrelated components that we look at. There's the control environment, the risk assessment process, the information and communication that's used throughout the organization. There's the specific control activities, and then there's how management monitors those controls on a periodic or ongoing basis. And we've concluded that the environment was effective for the period under audit. And then taking that a step further, looking at certain key processes and how those processes start from origination all the way to hitting the general ledger and impacting ultimately the financial statements. We've also looked at the treasury function. We've audited the estimates within the financial statements, the financial reporting process, expenditures, as well as looking at the payroll cycle, revenue, fixed assets, and grant compliance. And we've concluded that both the design and operation of those controls were effective for the period under audit as well. The last few slides, really good, and I know it's a lot of verbiage, so pardon me for that, but really I hit on a number of these things at the beginning. But if we had any material weaknesses or if we had audit entries, I'd be required to bring that to the commissioner's attention through the audit. Because although we've issued a clean opinion, if we had certain troubles getting through the audit, I would need to bring that to your attention. You know, if we had any disagreements with management, if there were barely acceptable accounting policies or anything of that nature. And like I said, I won't read through each one of these to you, but there's really nothing of a negative nature I need to bring to your attention through the audit process. And like I said, given the complexity of the environment we're in with new grants and there's new accounting standards coming out every year, you know, we assist management with implementing, but I can tell, you know, you guys haven't really missed a beat in working through those complexities. So I've also included my contact information in the back of the presentation. That way, if you do have questions or concerns outside of audit season, and I, fortunately or unfortunately, you only get to see me once a year. But I do make myself available to the commissioners as well as management, and I will meet periodically or answer questions as they're fresh in your mind. I'd like to help you out with those or deal with those when they're fresh, and don't feel like you have to wait till audit time to get an issue resolved or something answered. So with that, I'll open it up if there's any questions or comments.
Chris, I mean, it looks like it's a good audit, you know, and I want to thank staff for preparing that and you for your audit. I guess I only had one question is there ever any recommendations made, if needed, to another way to do a process or?
Yeah, if we notice an improvement, we'll bring that to management's attention. You know, we've helped with certain implementing new accounting standards, so management teams seems to be more on the forefront of when things are new or if there are questions, or they bring it to my attention, and to me that shows that your controls work. So if you bring a question to me but you don't know how to solve it, that inherently doesn't mean that there's a deficiency. Where there's a deficiency or a problem is no one says anything to me. We come out and audit payroll and realize, you know, God forbid, someone's being paid the wrong rate, or you've got pay rates that aren't approved. That's when we would say, well, there's a problem there. And we haven't had anything that would rise to that level of saying there's some sort of deficiency or weakness.
So Chris, you're available throughout the year. If a question pops up, and it can't be answered internally, you're the go-to person?
I'll do my best to answer it, but yes.
Okay.
Commissioners, anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I wanted to give you
Okay.
an overview of the general fund budget for fiscal year '22, budget to actual information. Before we begin the general fund overview, I'd really like to thank the Budget and Finance Department staff for their dedication and acknowledge the work they performed to complete the financial statements and the audit. Special recognition should be given to Kelsey Mace and Kim Edlin for their sense of commitment displayed throughout that process. The annual budget provides the basis for controlling and coordinating the county's scarce resources for programs and services. The original general fund budget for fiscal year '22 was $254 million. $29 million in adjustments were made to bring the final budget to $283 million. Budget adjustments were related to the unexpected revenue increases for income tax, recordation tax, grants, and other revenues. Major budget adjustments in fiscal year '22. As you know, both the revenue and expenditure budgets are developed based on historical trends, economic factors, and requests from departments in the community. The pandemic is a factor that had not been experienced in the recent past, and predicting the impact that it would have on the economy and community needs was unprecedented. The county and the nation are continuing to feel the effects that this event had. Budget adjustments are common and are a normal part of operations. The first major budget adjustment included expenditure increases for additional transfers to the county pension fund of $5 million. The county's funding status in fiscal year '21 was 68.9%, and despite the additional transfer to the pension fund, that funding ratio actually decreased to 60.74%. The goal or standard is 80%. The decrease in funding status was felt across the nation as earnings on investments plummeted. This highlights the effect of market volatility on employer-provided pension plans and this trend is unfortunately expected to continue. Funding needed for capital projects such as bridge repair and replacement and the communication systems upgrades were included at a little over $2 million, and they were a result of inflationary increases that were received. Debt service payments, we included an additional $2 million for payments on the state loan that was used for Basil Boulevard. The second adjustment that I wanted to point out was an adjustment for $1.8 million for proceeds from the sale of the old permit office building, and those proceeds were transferred to the CIP fund for future capital needs. What contributed to those income tax adjustments? Similar to fiscal year 21, tax rate projections compared to the approved budget were off. As I mentioned earlier, the pandemic and economic recovery created unprecedented circumstances that had a direct impact on the accuracy of those calculations. Additionally, the county uses a conservative approach when calculating revenue estimates. As a result, the commission made adjustments to the income tax rate. The rate at the beginning of fiscal year 22 was 3.2%, and it decreased to 3.0% on January the 1st of 22. That rate will further decrease in fiscal year 23 to 2.95% on January the 1st of 23. The unemployment rate at the end of fiscal year 20 was 8.4%, and at the end of fiscal year 22, it had decreased to 4.8%, creating higher income tax base for withholding payments. Based on the recent guidance provided by the White House, the unemployment rate is expected to decrease further through the end of the calendar year to an average of 3.6% nationally. At the end of the first quarter of fiscal year 23 in Washington County, the unemployment rate was actually 3.8%. Total employment remains below pre-pandemic levels, while total wages have grown at a higher rate than prior to the pandemic. Withholding receipts at the end of the fourth quarter of fiscal year 21 grew 8.4%, and the first quarter of calendar year 22 grew 6.7% year over year. Estimated payments increased by 8.4% in the fourth quarter of 21 and 4% in the first quarter of 22, following growth of 135% in fiscal year in 21. This likely reflects a new normal following the passage of legislation that allows pass-through entities to make estimated payments on behalf of resident members, and also reflects strong performance in non-wage income such as gains on investments or sales of property. The disparity grant was $8.4 million in fiscal year 22 and is a 7% increase over fiscal year 21's revenue of $7.8 million. And lastly, interest and penalties for late filers has also been difficult to estimate. Distributions can be volatile, and because they typically involve higher income households and depend on filing patterns, this also means that a small number of late returns can have a significant impact on that distribution. During the pandemic, the Comptroller's Office was also not actively pursuing assessment and collection efforts, and now that moratorium has been lifted, so late fees are expected to level out. Early in the fiscal year-end process, a $41 million surplus was expected. The commission met in August to discuss this preliminary figure and made the determination at that time to allocate $5.2 million to CIP projects, $5 million to the pension fund, and $21 million to CIP reserves. Those transactions were made prior to the fiscal year-end close and subsequent completion of the financial statements. Therefore, total revenues at the end of fiscal year 22 were $301 million, and total expenditures were $289.6 million. Of that $289.6 million in expenditures, $36 million was for transfers to other funds. The final excess of revenues over expenditures created a surplus of $11.4 million, and as a result of those additional decisions that were made in August regarding the $41 million surplus. Included in that $11.4 million is $3 million that was allocated for potential nonprofit or agency contributions in the current fiscal year, and $7.2 million remains in the operating reserve. The percentage of cash reserves required is calculated based on general fund revenue. Therefore, as revenues increase, the required cash reserves also increases. In fiscal year 22, the general fund cash reserve was $68.2 million. or 24.73%, which is about 3 months of cash reserves and is 3.62% higher than fiscal year 21's 21%. The target for the county's cash reserves as a percent of revenue is 17%, or 51 million, and that translates to about 2 months of reserves. The actual cash reserve is approximately $17.2 million over the minimum required reserve. Many of the community members watching are probably wondering what contributed to that $11.4 million surplus. Net real estate and personal property tax created revenues of $1.4 million over the final budget, and the majority of that is made up of personal property tax, which relates to business personal property, and is a good indication of business growth in the county. Income tax ended fiscal year '22, $18.5 million over the final budget, and we've already discussed some of the factors that impacted that number. Recordation tax ended fiscal year '22, $5.6 million over the final budget, and is a reflection of the housing market trend in fiscal year '22. The housing market experienced, one, a higher number of property transfers, and two, higher property sale prices due to the rising cost of materials for new construction and lower than normal inventory of homes available to purchase. Other revenue shortfall of $7.6 million is primarily due to increases in grant awards. For program grants, the full grant award is budgeted when awarded, and many of our grant periods extend beyond one year, or the grant period doesn't actually align with the current fiscal year. When looking at expenditures that were over budget, you can clearly see here that based on the Commission's decision in August, the $21 million transfer to the Capital Outlay Fund reserves was made prior to the end of the fiscal year. Additional expenditures that were under the final budget included $1.4 million in wage savings due to vacant positions throughout the fiscal year. With wage savings comes benefit savings of $3.6 million. Some of that relates to FICA and Medicare savings. However, because the county is self-insured for health insurance and workers' compensation insurance, it also means that those vacant positions translate to an immediate and direct savings for those unexpended benefits. $1.4 million is related to unexpended budget for operating departments, and similar to the variance that we saw in revenues, $8.3 million relates to program grant expenditures that were incurred during the fiscal year but not yet reimbursed. For the coming fiscal year '24 budget process, the Commission will need to consider a number of factors that may impact the county's financial condition. The county's economic environment mirrors what is being experienced regionally and nationally. And based on the most recent Consumer Price Index, the inflation rate at the end of September '22 increased 8.2% for the 12 months ending in September. The increased inflationary rate creates increases in both costs for operating and capital needs. That inflation rate and rising minimum wage requirements also have a direct impact on employee wages and subsequently the county's ability to attract and retain skilled and talented workers, which also impacts services for the community. Safer grant funding of $2.7 million for wages and benefits related to the 33 firefighter positions is winding down and expected to end in March of '24. The county also has restarted its infrastructure maintenance programs in the CIP fund. Costs associated with those projects will need to be reevaluated during the fiscal year '24 budget process to account for the soaring inflationary rates for materials and supplies, as well as interest payments for future debt issuance. And lastly, the pandemic brought about the need for changes in the county's public safety infrastructure related to emergency medical services. The pandemic created unforeseen increases in volunteerism and public donations for those services. This major initiative will need to be discussed in the coming months and will have a significant impact on the current and future year's budget with both one-time expenditures and continuing operating expenditures that will need to be considered. I wanted to come back to the $21 million that we transferred to the CIP fund in fiscal year '22. This $21 million can be transferred back to the general fund by a majority vote of the Commission at any time. I recommend that surplus funds be used for one-time purposes, such as an additional transfer to the pension fund to better our funding ratios, can also be used to reduce debt service in fiscal year '23 or fiscal year '24. The county typically issues about $12 million yearly in general obligation tax-supported debt, and using capital reserves for large projects can actually reduce the amount of debt required to be issued, and subsequently the amount of interest payments required to be paid for that outstanding debt. It can also be used for capital projects or for maintenance that has been deferred due to the unavailability of funding in recent years. And lastly, the funds can be used to fund some other projects that are included in the master plan for the Public Safety Training Center, or transferred back to the general fund for one-time uses related to potential changes in the county's public safety organizational structure. That concludes my presentation. I just wanted to open it up to you for any questions or requests for additional information at this time.
Commissioners, thoughts, comments, questions?
You said something that kind of caught my ear. The disparity grant, did you say that increased?
It increased over the prior fiscal year. It was $8.4 million in fiscal year '22 and $7.8 million in the prior fiscal year. It's budgeted in fiscal year '23 to actually decrease because we lowered our rate, our tax rate.
The disparity grant, did that include some of the decrease that we did in taxes for part of the year?
Because our rate didn't change until January, it was still based on the 3.2. What we'll be receiving in '23 will be based on the 3.0.
Okay. And then my only other comment would be that, you know, with that 21 million, I hope that the commissioners that are coming on board and this, the rest of, that the whole commissioner group will really take a look at funding the, moving up some of those projects down at the public safety facility. That's all I have on it.
Michelle, a couple of questions, comments I have. Thank you for your first report. I think it was very detailed, and as you can tell, the bar has been set high for you, but I think you'll do a good job.
Thank you.
Kelsey sent an email to, I think it went to all of the commissioners, but that, and it was October 11th, total surplus $41.4 million. So just to be clear, there were a lot of numbers up there, but if you, that $41.4 million, and either one of you that can answer, that's if you look at our budget as originally proposed last year and how we ended the year, correct? So we had some mid-year transfers to the CIP, but if you take those transfers out, because that was surplus money, our total surplus was $41.4 million.
Total surplus was $41.4 million, and of that, we transferred $5 million to the pension fund, $5 million to the CIP fund for additional projects.
A lot of it's been used already.
Correct, and we reserved about $11 million in the general fund for potential uses.
One question I had, on one of the slides, there was a turnover savings for employee vacancies of about $1.5 million.
Right.
I saw on the slide. So about 2 years ago, just for a little history, about 2 years ago, I think we first started to budget for turnover savings. That was something that we hadn't done before. Is that 1.4 in addition to what we may have already budgeted for turnover savings, or was that, does that make sense? Was that what we had already budgeted, or is that an additional to what was budgeted?
I would need to double check that information. I don't have that with me.
Okay. And relating to the pension, you mentioned that 80% funding is a kind of a standard that we should subscribe to.
Correct.
I haven't heard that yet. That's good to know. I know, again, about 2 years ago, when the pension was first brought to our attention, among the counties in Maryland, we were the second lowest funded, and not a superlative you want to be known for. So I appreciate you keeping an eye on that for us. That's something that impacts all of our employees who participate in our retirement plan, and ultimately, benefits them in retirement in the end of their careers. And of course, I suppose mark-to-market adjustments made our, the value of our pension go down a little bit, but.
It had a huge impact on us last fiscal year.
So I appreciate if you could keep an eye on that and report back to us periodically.
Okay, I will.
Thanks.
What's our current percent, excuse me, on the pension?
60.74%.
60.74.
Right.
And with investments, that could, with the way the things have been going, that could even drop. Do you expect it to drop more over the next year?
I do expect it to drop because the market is still volatile at this time, so I do expect it to decrease.
And one of the important reasons why we want our pension funded at a very good level is that affects our bond rating, correct?
It does. It affects our bond rating. It shows the bond rating agencies that our ability to pay for those current and future commitments,
Yeah, and-
what our ability is.
And for the people watching, the bond rating dictates our rate on borrowing, correct?
Correct. It impacts our interest rate on borrowing funds to pay for those large infrastructure projects that we
So
won't have.
if our rating changes and goes higher interest rate, then we're costing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars possibly?
Correct.
So it's important to keep that pension funding at a high percentage.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll just say, I mean, obviously, I don't have to remind this board, I mean, this board has made significant contributions the past 2 years towards that pension fund and the investments of what caused the issue. And I'll just make one comment about the wage, and obviously, you're going to check on that. But, you know, we've had some positions that have been open because we have not been able to fill them. So, you know, we've had some retainage issues and some attraction issues, and part of that is because of the salary. So I throw that out for you today because I want you to know that staff is currently looking at that, and we'll be back at some point sooner rather than later to have a discussion with the commissioners about salaries for county employees. So that's something that I just sort of throw out for you to think about as we move forward, because, you know, we do have, we have some positions open that we just have not been able to fill. And I think we have to take some action to do that. So I just want to take that opportunity to at least plant that seed to know that we'll be back to discuss that with you soon.
Okay. Commissioners, any more comments, questions? If not, we thank you all very much. Kelsey?
Thank you.
Michelle?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
Amy?
Michelle. Obviously, it's Michelle's first time making a presentation to the commissioners, and I just wanted to thank Kelsey and Kim and the whole budget finance team for all the work that you've done in the past year. And Michelle, welcome. Yeah, I've seen you at your first meeting, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Continuing with our agenda, our proposed Sharpsburg well. Please come forward. Oops, I'm sorry, I missed it. Purchase of the solid waste department. Excuse me, Mr.
Yeah. We're going to keep Michelle up here.
Yeah,
Now that
sorry
we've got her
about that.
here, we're going to,
I'm trying to beat that 4-month deadline that we're doing today.
that's right.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dave Mason with Solid Waste.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is an intergovernmental purchase agreement to purchase one new compactor for the solid waste department and an interfund loan from the general fund to the solid waste fund. The Code of Public Law of Washington County provides that the Board of County Commissioners may procure goods and services through a contract entered into by another governmental entity in accordance with the terms of the contract, regardless of whether the county was part of the original contract. So in other words, we're going to piggyback on a contract from another agency. The county will benefit from this contract with direct cost savings in the purchase of this equipment because the economies of scale the contract has leveraged. Additionally, the county will realize savings through administrative efficiencies as a result of not preparing, soliciting, and evaluating a bid. Acquisition of the equipment by utilizing the Florida Sheriff Association contract and eliminating the county's bid process would result in administrative and cost savings for the solid waste department and purchasing department in preparing specifications. The lease terms offered by the selected vendor's financial institution included an interest rate of 4.8% with 60 monthly payments of $17,537.94. The lease that was presented to us included terms that required the general fund to obligate general and tax revenues to repay the leased equipment, and those terms do not comply with county policy requiring that proprietary funds be self-supported by user fees and would actually negatively impact the county's bond rating and debt service ratios for future general obligation bonds. The county ended fiscal year '22 with that surplus of $41.4 million, and because time is of the essence for this purchase, a one-time use of general fund balance for this interfund loan will ensure that the equipment purchase is made. Debt payments for this equipment loan were included in the solid waste fund current year budget, and the interfund loan is proposed to have similar payment terms that include an interest rate of 2.0% with 60 monthly installment payments of $16,690.46. I did speak with the county's financial advisor, The approval of an interfund loan will have no impact on the county's bond rating. The county is in good fiscal health, and a plan is in place for the solid waste fund to repay this interfund loan to the general fund. The county will explore alternative financing options for less time-sensitive future purchases of this nature, such as completing a master operating lease. I will open it up to any questions at this time.
You know, I just can't keep my mouth shut on this one. What was that? I find it interesting that when we're talking about money, whenever we're talking about the budget, that we only show 17 million as a surplus. But then here, when we're asking for money, it says the county ended fiscal year, it's mentioned with a surplus of 41.4 million. I find it interesting that when people are requesting money, we use the higher number, but when we're presenting information, we use the 17 million, the number that came in after, that's all. Would it be smarter to just go ahead and buy the equipment, since we have 41.4 million in surplus, instead of leasing it over 60 months?
Well,
We're
this is a
we're not
propri-
leasing it, right? We're not going to lease.
No.
We're not, they were initially going to lease it, but we.
Oh, so
not
this
gonna
is
lease
to
it.
This is to buy
We're
and,
going to
Okay.
purchase
and
it.
repayment terms from the solid waste fund to the general fund.
Okay.
So it's not a permanent transfer to the solid waste fund.
I would make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
So just to clarify, the solid waste fund, the landfill operates as an enterprise fund.
Correct.
So that's why we don't want to use just general taxpayer dollars to go out and buy this piece of equipment. So general taxpayer dollars are loaning the money to the enterprise fund, so it kind of maintains its integrity as an enterprise fund.
Correct.
And then in turn, 2%, a nominal interest rate is from the landfill paid back to the general fund.
Correct, over a 5-year term.
Have a first and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, Sharpsburg Well. Mark Bradshaw, please come forward, introduce yourself and the matter.
I have a letter that Mr. Weaver, the mayor of Sharpsburg, sent me yesterday. So it's not, I didn't have time, of course, to get it out of the packet, so I'm just going to hand them out to you now.
Thank you.
Back in October, when I presented this proposal to you from the town of Sharpsburg, I misrepresented the town's intention of providing their well to us. The town's intention is for the county to go ahead and drill a well on their property. And then in the.
On Sharpsburg's property.
Yes, there at the park. And then if our well, let's say, produced 75% of the water needed, then they would offer their well to make up the additional 25%. So when I presented it to you, I said the town was offering their well outright to you. That was a misunderstanding on my part. The town actually wants the county to go ahead and drill the well and proceed with drilling the well on their property. And then in return, they would charge us a fee of .03 something cents per gallon of water that is pumped out of our well and their well. So I ran the two different scenarios for you. They're there on your ARC showing what the potential savings would be. The second scenario would be if the county chooses to drill the well on our own property back at our water plant. If we do that, then we don't have to pay the town their fee for the water. So you can see what the two scenarios are there. If we drill the well on the town's property, let's say the well produces 90,000 gallons a day. Our savings would be just shy of $26,000. If we drill the well on our property, the savings would be a potential $130,000. My recommendation would be to go ahead and drill the well on the county's property. I mean, we have the same risk whether we drill the well on the town's property or our property of actually hitting water, but the potential return would be a lot greater if we drill it on ours versus drilling it on the town's property. I know Mr. Weaver would prefer us to drill it on their property, because then the money they collect from us, they plan to issue that as a rebate to the citizens to offset their current water bill.
If we drilled it on their property, is there a scenario how long it takes to get our money back?
We have to pay them indefinitely for the water usage, and they also, in their letter, stated that there would be an escalator. If we raise our rates a percentage, they would raise their withdrawal rate by the same percentage. It's going to cost us approximately $300,000 to develop this well. So let's say, I'll use the 75% because that generates right around $30,000 a year. So you're looking at 10 to 15-year payback if we drilled on the town's property, whereas if it's on our property, our savings would be 117, so you're looking at maybe 3 to 4 years instead of 10 to 12.
About 4 years, possibly get the money back if we drilled on Sharpsburg's property.
On Sharpsburg property, you're looking at over 10 years.
10 years?
Over 10 years.
Yeah, it's gonna cost us right around $300,000, and our savings at 75% would be a little over $30,000, so you're looking in excess of 10 years.
Who are the customers that would use this water,
Town of Sharpsburg and the surrounding areas.
even outside of Sharpsburg?
Yeah, Confederate Hills is not in the corporate limits, they are. And then we have water lines that run down to the wastewater treatment plant on Harpers Ferry Road. That is not in the town limits, and like the battlefield is connected to it, and they're not in the,
So the people living outside of town limits wouldn't receive the credit that they're talking about?
that is correct. If we go with the town's proposal, they will only issue the credit for the town residents only.
And then I mean, as a businessman, you look at this and obviously you don't want to see negatives. And so the county property, to me, would seem the way to go. Although I do know that there's an issue, as I was campaigning in that area, somebody was complaining or saying something about the issue of the cost of the water that they've been paying for a very long time. Is there a way that we can use some of these additional funds to help maybe offset the town's cost without drilling on their property?
Well, if we drill the well on our property, the savings would be 100% ours, which would then reflect in our operating budgets then too, because now our O&M costs have drastically decreased. So there would be savings in the water fund side. How to distribute them, I mean, I would expect that the rate increases would not maybe be required for a couple years. Or if they were required, they would be lower than normal.
It does concern me that the only people that would benefit from drilling on the town's property would be people that actually live within the town limits, although there's others that would be receiving that as well. Anyway.
Actually, obviously, I want to hear from all staff what the recommendation is, and I don't want them to say it's not their decision because we vote on it. I want to hear it from all staff. And this just seems confusing to me still, because last meeting I heard something completely different. I heard something, and you just admitted it, you said something. But there was advantages and disadvantages other than the money. It was like potential of a better shot to hit water here, a better shot to hit it here. Did we say that last time? I think I remember that.
We basically stated that there is an existing well on this property. The town uses it to irrigate the ball fields. It is a pretty good well. We tested the quality. It is good, and it, I think, generates around 75 gallons a minute. So it does produce approximately 75% of our need. But when
There's
you
no
drill,
guarantee we're going to hit water there. I mean, it was discussed at this is a place where we know we have a well that produces water, and if we move to another location, we could spend X amount of dollars drilling a dry well or a bad. We talked about that, so that's where I'm getting confused.
We run the risk of either place not hitting any water. I mean, when you drill a well, you're rolling the dice. You have no idea what you're going to get. I mean, your neighbor may have a great well, produce a lot of money. You drill 100 feet away, you get a dry hole. When it comes to engineering, groundwater is still one of them great mysteries that nobody really can predict what it's going to be. I mean, there is a spring going back to the water plant along the side of our road that does tend to flow year-round. So there is water in that vicinity. Whether or not I can hit that same aquifer until you drill the hole, you don't know. And it will cost us approximately $30,000 to actually drill a hole to determine the quantity and quality of the water that we would get.
Okay, that's what I was just gonna ask, because it's not gonna, it'll be $300,000 to develop the entire well.
Correct.
But it's gonna cost us $30,000 to dig a hole and see if we hit water, right? So,
Correct.
so
Approximately $30,000 to drill the well, to test the quantity of it, and to do the quality and quantity
So I guess
testing.
if we do that and we don't hit anything, or we don't get the quality we're looking for,
Is that the cost
I would
of each
assume we'll be back.
location? Is that the cost of each location, 30,000?
Yes.
Have we already done that on the town's property?
No.
We have not done it yet.
We have tested the quality of the water on the town's property. It did have slight high hardness content, which is not a big deal.
Okay.
Review the town's proposal versus your recommendation.
The town's proposal is we drill the well on their property. They will charge the county .003171 cents per gallon of water that is withdrawn either from our well or from their well. The proposal is we drill a well. If our well is able to produce 100% of the water, then we do not need their well. If our well, let's say, produces 75%, then the town will offer their well to us for the additional 25% to make 100%. The goal of the town is not to use the river at all. They want to use these wells because well water is cheaper to treat than surface water. So the town's goal is to try to get 100% away from the river and go strictly with groundwater.
Well, and the other thing is, we're spending $300,000 no matter where we put this at. So if we put it on the town's ground, we're spending $300,000, and then we're also gonna pay for the usage of it.
Does either location provide a savings in terms of directing the water from one location to another?
The Sharpsburg plant site may offer a little bit of savings because I may be able to use the UV system associated that I already have at that plant. Whereas if I do the Tarrant site, I'd have to put all the equipment up there. Whereas some of the treatment equipment I may be able to utilize at Sharpsburg, such as the UV, or maybe even use the existing chemical feed systems I already have down there.
The town of Sharpsburg wants to charge per gallon of water that's withdrawn. I don't know, just a question. Is that typical, if it helps their residents at the end of the day, for them to charge it? Do you know of any other jurisdiction that charges their county for water that's withdrawn to supply their municipality with water? I'm just wondering if that fee was eliminated, that could be cost savings passed on to the users as well.
I'm unaware of any other municipality that has that type of agreement.
You know, so if we do it on Sharpsburg's, their citizens, to a certain point, are gonna save money.
Correct.
And if we do it on ours, those citizens aren't gonna save money.
There is a potential, there will be savings there, but more than likely, it would be contributed to the water fund. I don't know if the commissioners would want to dedicate all the savings directly toward the Sharpsburg, or whether it be just across the water fund as a whole.
And you're sort of leaning like, just dollars and cents, you're making your decision, let's go to county property, correct?
Yes, we have the same risk, don't matter which property I drill the well on. I'm going, initial investment's gonna be $30,000 to drill the well. But my return on investment, if it's on the county property, is a lot greater versus being on the town. The town at 90% would be 26,000 savings. On the county property, it'd be in excess of 130.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the fence because, you know, we give money to all municipalities and we try to help them all. And if I was sure that, you know, if we can offer Sharpsburg a benefit on water, that would be a good thing, a price. But then again, I personally would sort of like to hear from Sharpsburg too, get their side of the story. Not that I don't trust you, Mark. I mean, it's good presentation. I don't know if I can make an accurate decision now on all the benefits and all the positives and negatives at this point. I mean, help me out, guys.
I did have a question. You had mentioned 25% of the water would be produced by the Sharpsburg well, 75% the county. So would we only pay .003 cents per gallon on the 25% or the whole 100%?
Whole 100%. Whatever water's drawn, whether it's from our well or their well, we still pay the same rate, that .03, whatever it was there per gallon.
You know, the problem, I think, here is people don't want to make a decision because they don't want to upset anybody. But if anybody were looking at this from a business standpoint, it only makes sense to do this on county property. And, I mean, I just don't see, I don't see how the other option works. And I say that, and I know there's probably going to be people that don't like that, but, you know, sometimes you got to make hard decisions and not political decisions. To me, it only makes sense that we drill on county property. Either that or we just continue to drill out of the Potomac at the same cost that we're currently at. That's just my opinion.
I'm sure.
I can make a decision based on what you provided.
I'm sure Mayor Weaver would be willing to come in and discuss this matter with you if that's what you want.
Well, I mean, what Commissioner Berger says makes sense. I mean, dollars and cents, but I'm afraid, and not because of you, Mark, don't get me wrong, I'm just afraid I might be missing a piece of the puzzle here. If anybody feels the same way, then if they don't, then I would, you know, I'd just sort of like to hear from the mayor or somebody representing Sharpsburg.
I agree with that.
Side.
I agree with that. I'd like to hear from the mayor. In all honesty, he called me yesterday evening, and I haven't been able to return his call. So he did reach out asking to share his viewpoint. I'd like to hear what that is.
I'm in agreement. I think we have a consensus to come back with the mayor included in the next presentation.
And I think it would be important to know the number of county users on this system, new system, and the number of Sharpsburg town users.
Is the fee negotiable? If we're on Sharpsburg property, is the rate we're being charged for our well and their well, can that be lowered from our well or not? I know it's their water, so that would be their argument and some things like that.
All right, so we'll work with Mark and
Mark,
the mayor to bring this back before the commissioners.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Mark, welcome back. We have the Oak Ridge Pump Station upgrade.
Okay. Again, my name is Mark Bradshaw, Director of Environmental Management. I'm here today to request the county purchase 3 pumps that are currently being rented and the associated equipment from Xylem for $216,227, and also to approve a budget transfer that's attached. One quick comment. Budget and Finance informed me that one of the account numbers on the budget transfer is incorrect, so it would need to be, I can't remember which, I think it's the expenditure account number is wrong. Revenue one, sorry. So we have to tweak the account stream, but the dollar amount would still remain the same. The Oak Ridge Pump Station was scheduled to be completed August 2nd of 2022, but due to equipment delays, it's now will not be completed until sometime in March of 2023 is what the contractor is projected. The contractor The county awarded a contract to PSI to upgrade the Oak Ridge Pump Station. The upgrades include installing new pumps, upgrading the existing power, and modification to the existing structure. Before the new pumps and modification could be made to the pump station, the bypass pumping had to be set up to take the existing station offline. The contractor rented the bypass pumps from Xylem and has been bypassing the station since March of 2022. Per a letter dated February 14th of 22 from the vendor supplying the motor control center, the equipment was tentatively scheduled to be delivered within 14 to 16 weeks. In July of 22, the MCC vendor sent an email to PSI explaining that the MCC wasn't scheduled to be shipped from Mexico until January of 2023. And once received, they would need an additional 4 to 6 weeks to complete the wiring and programming. Therefore, the new MCC could not be installed until March of 2023. The contractor has requested compensation in the amount of $7,207.38 per week to maintain the bypass pumping operation until the new MCC can be installed. In the event that the MCC is delivered and installed in March, the total charge would be additional 17 weeks totaling $122,474.46. If the equipment is delayed, then the cost would increase per week based on the contractor's request. As we move forward into colder months, the pumps will also need to be winterized. The contractor will take care of this, but will pass the additional cost on to us. The cost they give us of $7,200 per week did not include the winterization costs, so they will be increasing that amount here as we move into the colder months. This increase, the average change order amount substantially. I estimate it would be an additional $60,000 to winterize these pumps during the cold months that the contractor has not requested yet, so that will be on addition of the 122 that we know of. The county can purchase the pumps from Xylem and take over the operations, thus eliminating the change order the contractor is requesting, and then at the end of the project, the county will own the 3 pumps that can be utilized by the Department of Water Quality. During that time, we would be responsible for operating the pumps. We would continue to have Xylem perform all the maintenance. We'd be responsible for fueling, and we would also be responsible for the winterization at that point. The quote from Xylem is attached. You can see it's, like I said, $216,000 to buy the pumps outright. Or the other alternative is we continue to pay the contractor the rental fee, and then at the end of the project, the pumps would be returned to Xylem. My scenario is I'd like to go ahead and purchase the pumps, then at the end of the project, we actually have something.
You can move those pumps around? Is that what you can do?
Yeah, they're portable pumps. We can take them to different pump stations. If one of our other stations has an issue, we can take a bypass pump. That's what we.
What do you do now if another station has an issue?
We currently have one bypass pump we physically own. We get in a jam, we call Xylem up, and usually they can have a pump there within a couple hours for emergency situations. So this would give us more flexibility.
And then you're renting it in that situation for,
Yes.
Right.
Oak Ridge has had
And we're at their mercy at that point. I mean, we end up having to pay whatever they charge us.
pump station across from Marty Snook Park.
Yes, sir.
This is the one, sometimes we get complaints about odor. Would this help eliminate that altogether, or we still, no?
This won't do anything for the odors. The odors, right now, we don't have a wet well, so as it comes in, we pump it out right away, so there's no storage. But once the station goes back online, we treat for odors, but on occasions, you may get them under certain environmental conditions. The air tends to be a little heavier in tanks.
I mean, I'd be okay with it, because I think we haven't figured out even the long-range effect of not having pumps. Because if we have to rent them every time we have a, be nice to put your own pump in there and not have to pay rent.
Yes, if we buy these 3 pumps, that would give us a total of 4. I don't think our need would ever exceed 4 pumps. Right now, we have 1, so
How many pumping stations?
52.
Okay, so you could have 2 down at any given time.
Please don't jinx me.
You said 60,000 to winterize those 3 pumps.
Yes.
How do we winterize the pumps that we're responsible for?
Right now, we're not responsible for them. They're under the.
Those 3, I'm talking about.
Oh,
the
how you
one-
do it? Sunbelt has a, what, it looks like a.
So that's nothing we can do in-house?
No, we have to rent equipment. They use basically it's a big steam jenny, and we take a special hose and wrap around the part of the pump that has the water and the discharge piping, and it circulates hot water glycol mix through it, which then in return, of course, keeps it from freezing during the winter months. And the pumps that are not being utilized at this time would be drained so that there would be no water in them.
So the county doesn't do any winterization on pumps anywhere in the county at all?
Normally, our pumps are sitting inside or submersible
fine.
pumps, so we don't have that problem, but these pumps are sitting above ground with all the piping above ground, so therefore, the cold weather affects them drastically.
Okay.
If I happen to have my bypass pump out during the winter, yes, I would have to winterize it at that time, but fortunately, I haven't had that situation arise yet.
Commissioners, there's a recommended motion. Thoughts, comments?
I'd motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
A first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Randy Noggle, contract award, PUR-1578. Good morning.
Morning. Randy Noggle, Buyer in the Purchasing Department. The first recommendation I have for you this morning is the contract award PUR 1578, and this is for gasoline and diesel fuel deliveries. We move to award the bids for the gasoline and diesel fuel deliveries under option number 1, which is 4 separate contracts to the responsible bidders who submit the lowest bid. The contract for gasoline tank wagon is recommended to be awarded to AC&T out of Hagerstown, Maryland. The gasoline transport load to Petroleum Traders out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. The diesel tank wagon delivery, AC&T out of Hagerstown, Maryland, and the diesel transport, AC&T out of Hagerstown, Maryland. The tabulations listed below were made from the bids received on October 26, 2022, based on the estimated quantities for a contract period tentatively to begin December 1st, 2022, ending November 30th, 2023. This contract is for a 1-year period with no renewal. The requirements on these contracts for the county, we guarantee no minimum or maximum. The invitation of bid was listed in the local newspaper, the county's website, and the e-Maryland Marketplace website as well. 20 companies downloaded the bid document. We received 5 bids back. 1 was deemed non-responsive due to not meeting the specification of the diesel gasoline.
Was that one of those listed here?
Yes,
Which one?
Saratoga.
Okay.
Yeah. The contract requirements include the City of Hagerstown, Washington County Public Schools, and the Hagerstown Community College, and they will make their own separate formal contract award. There is funding available in various departmental operating budgets for this purchase.
Just a curious question. How much did this go up from last year? Do you know?
I do know. So for our tank wagon gas, it went up about 18.8%. The tank wagon diesel, about 22.3%. The transport gas, about 97%.
How much?
97.
97?
Yeah. The transport is the larger.
Right.
the larger
So it went
gas.
up that much. So I guess the next curious question, and not to belabor this, but you say they're available in various budgets. Does that crash their budgets?
No, it doesn't crash their budgets because we forecast this with a local vendor. They help us forecast the cost, and we work hand in hand with budget and finance to make sure the numbers are there.
Have those forecasts been rather accurate?
They have been.
Who was that local vendor?
It's AT&T.
Saratoga, what was the problem? What didn't they meet?
We have a particular additive for winterization, and they were offering an alternative that doesn't meet our specification, so we deemed them non-responsive.
Commissioners?
Motion to approve.
I'll second the motion. I just would like to point out, it struck me that 3 of the 4 winning bids are a local company, which I think is a good thing. For option number 2, I suppose it is, it's going to Fort Wayne, Indiana. AT&T, our local company's bid was only 1.5% off. I just think that's unfortunate that we don't offer a local preference for a local company. Local companies give back to our community in so many ways, and they employ local people, and will, no doubt, those local people pay local income tax.
And to go with option number 2 was about $26,000 more, which we have awarded that way before. So this is just my recommendation, if you see a different way to award.
I thought we had to go with the lowest.
We normally do go with the lowest, but historically, we have went with option 2 at a higher price before.
Under what circumstances? It was my impression that we couldn't. We have to award a
I don't
contract
know
to
the
the.
circumstances, I did not process that bid at that time, but it was awarded that way before.
I mean, the Code of Public Local Laws requires that we make the award to the lowest responsive
Again,
bidder.
Kirk, I'm not positive on that, I just know that it was years ago awarded under option 2, and it was more.
Sometimes options are presented to us as a bundle. Is that how it was done in the past, maybe?
Again,
or-
I'm not positive, I didn't process that one, I know historically it has been done that way. But we do recommend a low bid normally every time we come before.
Well, and the local company is getting 3 of those contracts.
When I first brought this issue up many years ago, it was for AT&T, who was off by like $1,500 to haul leachate on a $250,000 contract from the landfill to Elliott Parkway. And on that same day, AT&T announced $10,000 in scholarships to the community that the company based out of Baltimore didn't give our local community scholarships. I just think it's unfortunate. We see this time and again.
Yeah, it might be good in the future, because everybody's a little confused about that, to clarify what we can do and what can't do, because I tend to agree. Just what we can do. and what we can't. I don't want to do anything not knowing for sure.
Yeah, we don't have local preference, so we do go
I
by
know that,
volunteer.
but you just said option 2, and then
Yeah,
there was some discussion about it with the attorneys. So I think maybe we'll clarify that somewhere in the future.
I mean, I'll just say this, I don't know what the circumstances of that was, but, I mean, we're required by law to award to the lowest responsible bidder. So if there was some, I don't know what the specifics of that was, and,
not either.
I mean, I
It's a
I think
different
the rule is, I don't think there's any question about what the law says, but.
Correct.
So if there was some different circumstance there, I don't know what that was, but.
All right, we have a motion, first and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you very much.
The next recommendation I have for you this morning is the bid award CUR 1579, swimming pool and wastewater treatment chemicals. Move to award the bids for swimming pool and wastewater treatment chemicals to the responsible low bidders as listed below. The county accepted bids on October 26, 2022 for the swimming pool and wastewater treatment chemicals requirements for county departments, as well as the city of Hagerstown. We did post this on the e-Maryland Marketplace website, the county's website, and in the local newspaper. This contract term is for a period of 1 year with no renewal, tentatively to begin December 1st, 2022, ending November 30th, 2023. This is for a county recommendation only. The city of Hagerstown, the town of Boonesborough will make their own separate award. Again, this contract does not guarantee a minimum or maximum purchase. Funding is available in the Department of Water Quality and Parks and Recs budget for the purchases.
Commissioners?
Motion to approve.
Second.
A first and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next up, Officer Training Simulator. Welcome, sir. Welcome. Please introduce yourself and the matter.
Cody Miller, Corps Master with the Sheriff's Office. Pete Gossage, Patrol Commander of the Sheriff's Office.
The last recommendation I have for you this morning is the sole source procurement, PUR 1590, an Apex Officer Training Simulator. Move to authorize the sole source procurement of an Apex Officer Training Simulator for the use of the Sheriff's Office in the amount of $67,500 from GovRed Technologies out of Las Vegas, Nevada, based on their quote dated November 2nd, 2022. The Apex Officer Training System is a comprehensive solution that is designed to allow trainers the ability to give presentations and classes, conduct interactive testing and assessment, and provide immersive hands-on scenario-based exercises. On September 13th, 2022, the Purchasing Department received a request from the Sheriff's Department in regards to this procurement of the Apex Officer Training Simulator. The Sheriff's Office wishes to apply Sections 1 through 106.2A, 1 and 2 of the Code of Local Public Laws of Washington County to the procurement requested. This section states that sole source procurement is authorized and permissible when only one source meets the county's requirements. This request requires the approval of 4 out of 5 commissioners in order to proceed with this sole source procurement. There is funding available in the CIP within this department.
That goes in that training room at the, simulation room at the training center, right?
That's where it will be, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good with it. Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
A second.
Discussion?
When that software and program's up and running, I'd like to see a demonstration because as it was shared with me, Commissioner Wagner alluded to, you know, that shows those split-second decisions sometimes that have to be made.
We'll do better than that.
I want to do it.
We'll put it on you.
I want to do it.
We'll put it on you.
Yeah.
Challenge accepted.
We'll do that. Yeah. I like it.
All in favor, I think we took all in favor, say aye. We need 4 or 5 just for clarity. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, again, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Shanktown Road, Railroad Crossing. Gentlemen, please introduce yourself and the matter. Pardon me.
Good morning, Scott Hobbs, Director of Engineering.
Good morning.
Good morning, Todd Moser, Real Property Administrator. Arrive at a consensus regarding the closure of railroad crossing on Shanktown Road and quit claim of right-of-way beyond the crossing.
The railroad crossing on Shanktown Road was identified by prior staff as a potential closure location. This was discussed with the Board of County Commissioners in 2014 in connection with proposed economic development in a highway interchange area that would require railroad crossing credits, and that was down near Sharpsburg Pike and Colonel Henry Douglas Drive.
That development plan did not proceed, but recently staff was contacted by a developer for a new plan on the same property about utilizing this credit and its negotiations with CSX to open a private crossing at the east end of Colonel Henry K. Douglas Drive. The notice to quit claim has been advertised October 24th, October 31st, and November 7th. Closure of this railroad crossing is appropriate for the following reasons. 1, safety concerns at the crossing. As you can see, there's no roadbed beyond the crossing. It's a little bit of a steep drop off there. The land has also, beyond the crossing, has returned to its natural state. And then land beyond the crossing is owned by the state of Maryland and the National Park Service. Both parcels on those properties have other access to the properties.
The railroad right there at Shanktown Road, they don't use that railroad at all anymore?
So this is just the crossing. The railroad is an active railroad. This is just to put well, I'm not sure but it would be barricade. So there'd be no vehicular traffic beyond that.
I guess hunters could still cross their state land if they had to, so. Yeah, it's just something to keep cars from going across.
Correct.
The county has 37 railroad crossings, roads that cross over these crossings. And one of the initiatives, of course, is to try to remove for safety purposes to either close or provide gates and lights and those type of.
So currently, the citizens have a right to cross that railroad track to go over to the state or federal property?
I don't believe it's, sure, they could do that, but I don't believe it's a designated spot to access that state and federal property. I don't believe the state and federal government advertise that as a access to the canal, even though that's what it is. As you can see there, and I've been down there many times, I mean, there's not even like a goat path there from when I went down to look at it.
But Shanktown Road is public right-of-way.
That's correct.
And then how far does Shanktown Road go beyond the railroad crossing?
Doesn't.
Our right-of-way extends down, I don't know how many yards, but it extends a good ways beyond that crossing. And so that's why the quit claim of this was kind of a second part of it. I didn't think there was a good reason necessarily for us to hold on to that property if there's not going to be a crossing.
And you don't mention the developer. Who's the developer?
Hogan Companies currently has a traffic impact study in for review and also a grading plan for a site. Distribution center is currently proposed on the other side of the railroad tracks, and
Larry Hogan?
I'm not sure what the connection.
Larry Hogan?
Yeah. It's companies.
What's he looking to put there?
Currently in for plan is a distribution center, approximately 900,000 square feet on the other side of the railroad tracks there off of Colonel Henry
Is that a
Douglas Drive.
warehouse? Distribution center, the same as a warehouse?
That's what's shown on the plans is 900,000.
I might have the wrong location on my map here. I'm looking at Shanktown Road right beside of Fort Frederick State Park. McCoy's Ferry, Big Pool for a distribution center?
No.
No, this is just, the distribution center requires a public crossing to be closed. This is
Okay.
that public crossing that we
Understood. Thank you for clarifying that.
And years ago was discussed with the board about was there any locations for closing railroad crossings? With 37 crossings for the county, we go through and take a look at what can be improved. We worked with State Highway Administration. They provide funding to the county to go through and add gates and lights at different crossings that don't have those for safety improvements. So one of the options was this location years ago. That was talked about. The developer at the time at Colonel Henry asked, is this one of the options moving forward that could be utilized? Typically what they have is 3 closures of a crossing to 1 opening somewhere else. So they're looking to get access to their land, and that's what they're looking for.
So again, this specific crossing was ideal because a private citizen didn't own beyond the crossing. So it wasn't going to affect private property, and the crossing wasn't being used by vehicular traffic. As you can see, the pavement ends.
Because it is so close to some recreational area, I mean, would it be closed off to someone who uses that route to access the river for fishing, for
Canal?
the canal? It looks like it almost goes to the canal and it's halfway to the river.
It does go to the canal. Again, I don't believe it's a designated area, not to say that no one uses it.
There's a location to the west. I think that there's another designated area to the west potentially.
But both of those properties do have additional access.
What about for emergency services reasons? And I haven't been there to lay eyes on it, but I know river rescues or even canal rescues on the canal sometimes can get tricky because access to those areas are often limited. And you have to go far upstream or access maybe from miles away from where an incident might happen. Would that restrict emergency services accessing it?
I can't sit here and tell you that it would not. I can only tell you that there's other access to both of those properties, but I can't tell you that.
You know, I was down there not long ago. A friend of mine lives on Shanktown. What I saw, I went to that crossing because there's always good pictures of trains coming through there. I don't think I could get my truck past that crossing very far, the way it looked like, but I didn't try. But I think there's some good points. I mean, has emergency services ever, that would be the only thing that would concern me. Everybody accesses from Fort Frederick usually. But I was wondering maybe if emergency service did they ever use that? Did they ever get down to the river using that? That'd be probably a question I'd have.
Commissioners, comments, thoughts? You want a consensus, not a motion? Is that what you're looking at for? Arrive at a consensus?
Need a motion.
That would be a motion, that's
Okay, it says arrive at a consensus,
Yes.
so it's a motion.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
I'll be a no, and that's okay. I just would like to hear back from emergency services. And it may be a moot point, it may not be accessible, but
Hearing no more discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
3-2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, I believe I have Kirk Downey. Please introduce the subject.
Morning, Commissioners. The Commissioners have reached a consensus on several planning and zoning matters, including two proposed rezonings in RZ 21-005 and RZ 21-007, as well as a requested text amendment, RZ 22-001, and the removal of a RB district on property in RZ-22-003. The appropriate documentations have been prepared for finalization and formal adoption in those matters, including proposed decisions and findings of fact, as well as appropriate ordinances. And it would be in order at this time for the Commissioners to adopt those documents and formalize the planning and zoning matters. Would point out there was a typo in RZ 21-007. The Planning Commission, it's in the proposed decision that the Planning Commission recommended denial. It has been brought to my attention that the Planning Commission actually recommended, or I'm sorry, it's in the document that they recommended approval. They recommended denial. They actually recommended approval in RZ-21-007. So the final document will reflect that change.
So Kirk, just to clarify, for item number 2 pertaining to the Beaver Creek LLC, the Planning Commission approved their request, recommended approval, but we, the board, voted, I believe it was unanimous, no.
That's correct.
So you want a motion to approve all those 4 points? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, there needs to be a motion to adopt the proposed decisions as well as the ordinances, which closes the record and formalizes the board's actions.
The only other one I would bring up might be, I don't know if Senator Corderman's doing this again or not, but every year seems like he brings up the prisoner release procedures, release back where the crime was committed, right?
I think you're an item ahead.
Excuse me?
I think you're an item ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm kind of confused. It says move to adopt the decisions of finding of fact in RZ 21-05, denying map amendments. So are we denying or are we approving?
You reached a consensus to deny the requested rezonings in both RZ 21-05 and RZ 21-007. So you are adopting the decision of findings of fact, but they have been prepared to deny the requested reclassification.
Commissioners, I move to adopt the decisions and findings of fact in RZ 21005 and RZ 21007, denying map amendments for requested rezoning classifications, and to adopt the proposed ordinances in RZ 22001, approving a text amendment, and RZ 22003, approving a map amendment, partially terminating a rural business district.
Okay, you're bringing fall forward. That's a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, first, second, any further discussion?
So we're approving two, denying two.
Yeah.
We've already
clarify
done
that
this.
again.
We're just,
Run through that again for me, about what this motion's gonna do.
You are adopting findings of fact and the decision in RZ 21-005 and RZ 21-007. Both of those are requested rezonings. The board reached a consensus to deny the requested rezonings. So you are adopting the decisions that denies the rezonings. In RZ 22-001, that was a requested text amendment. You are adopting an ordinance effectuating the text amendment, which amends the zoning ordinance having to do with educational facilities. And then there was a partial request for a map amendment to terminate a rural business district on property owned by the Blickenstaffs on Mount Tabor Road. The board approved that termination. This is an ordinance that amends the zoning map to reflect that decision.
so
We're approving what we approved.
we've already discussed these. We're just going through the final step
That's
of making it
correct.
official.
Completing the record.
The formality, correct. All right, I have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is that 5-0? 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Final matter on the agenda is a discussion of items that have been identified by staff as potential legislative items for the upcoming session of the General Assembly beginning in January. Wanted to discuss these with you again. We have previously discussed them, but they will be presented to the delegation to the General Assembly shortly after the new board takes effect, and wanted to give this board the opportunity to review those items and receive any input that you may have. Briefly, just running through what have been identified. The first is a request from the sheriff that he be given collective bargaining authority to negotiate on behalf of his office and the county with any identified collective bargaining unit or union that might be identified for certain segments of the sheriff's office staff. There's also a request from the sheriff that the salary for the sheriff be indexed as 90% of the salary of the state's attorney. This would remove the sheriff's salary from the salary study position and set it at a certain amount that then is indexed as the state's attorney's salary may change. There's a request for change to the Title 8 of the Code of Public Local Laws. That is the Code of Public Local Laws that concerns the electrical board and election license or electrical licenses. Those changes are not substantive, but because of terminology changes in state law, there needs to be changes in our local law to bring them into conformity. Request for inclusion in the governor's capital budget for an apparatus operator and defensive driving training range at the Public Safety Training Center. That's approximately $2.25 million request. There was previous mention of discussions for some type of grants funding or capital support for an expansion that is going to occur at the Pittsburgh Institute of Aviation. To request that capital support or grant funding be made available for the town of Hancock wastewater upgrades. There was a request that support be provided for rural schools. And one additional item that I accidentally omitted, but which Andrew has identified as being a request for capital support for improvements at the Marty Snook Park.
So you're requesting to see if we have any additionals to add before we have our meeting?
Any additions or deletions or otherwise guidance from this board to staff for presentation before the delegation?
I had reached out to the senator and all the current delegates. I don't know if this would be where to bring this up, but I had thought about the idea of offering the same state health insurance to foster parents that state workers receive. Is that something that so that people who want to become foster parents, if they don't have current health insurance options, they would be eligible to receive health insurance through the state of Maryland at the same rate that state employees receive. Maybe, Terry, there's a bug in your ear because I don't think I sent that to you. But I know a lot of foster parents who live without health insurance. A lot of them are older, and they do this as a benefit to society. So anyway, just a thought.
We can also bring it up for discussion when we meet with them, and our meeting is scheduled when?
Tentatively for December 7th, but we haven't, that hasn't been
Is that something
finalized
we
yet.
could do for Commissioner Burkett then, bring that up? Or is that would just be strictly a state initiative, but we could support it?
Yeah, we could raise the issue during that meeting. I mean, that's what that discussion's about, so.
I mean, if you all would be willing to do that, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly would. It's a good idea.
I think it's,
Commissioners, any other additions or subtractions?
Just the one I mentioned when I was wandering there a little while ago about the state, Senator Corderman's general attempt for the prisoner release.
Commissioner Kiefer, did you have one?
Two possible items that we can add. I know we've talked about this in years past, but exempting Washington County from the emissions testing program, similar to Allegheny and Garrett County. Again, I think one of the arguments that was made last year is the Interstate 70 to 81 bring through a lot of the traffic that may be counted in that air pollution. And it's not our local residents contributing to it, certainly based on our size as a county. But that heavy traffic that flows through, maybe that could be considered. And we kind of touched on it earlier, local preference, if there's an interest in having that conversation with their delegation.
One of the things I want to end up asking again, we've been waiting diligently, patiently for I-81 funding. Haven't heard nothing from the federal government on that grant. We haven't heard nothing from the state. And meanwhile, we're heading into the next General Assembly and changing of governors, and we haven't heard that. So I think we need to passionately bring that back in front of our delegation when we meet with them in December, if we don't hear something sooner.
I agree with that. We should continue to bring that forward. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, disappointment's the word.
Yeah.
21 plus years are waiting for 81 to be widened.
I'm still hoping we hear,
Still not happening.
they're talking about December now, we may hear, but I don't know.
Okay, Commissioner, okay.
There's one other thing, and Kirk mentioned it, the issue, the playground equipment at Marty Snook Park. Andrew, we're talking about expanding playground equipment in Marty Snook Park, right?
And replacing the inclusive one that Mile High, which is a nonprofit organization, is partnering with them.
Okay, and I think we have a lot of local support for that, I believe,
Yes.
right? So,
Hey, Commissioners, any other items you want to add?
Add that to the list.
If
So,
not,
just to confirm,
consensus that can move forward with that. Go
yeah,
ahead.
the consensus for the 7 listed items, number 8 was the Marty Snook Park. Number 9, foster parents, health insurance at the same rate as state employees. Number 10, prisoner release to the jurisdiction from which they were originally incarcerated. 11, exemption from the vehicle emissions inspection program. And 12, a discussion concerning local preference, which will require a change to the Code of Public Local Laws concerning procurement.
Okay.
Is,
Commissioners, that suffice? Any additions, anything else? If not, thank you, Mr. Downey.
thank you.
Motion to go into closed session?
Motion to go into closed session.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.